Hello, this video is a follow-up to my first impressions of Deadlock. You don't have to watch that video to watch this one. It's just going to go over some of the stuff I got wrong in that video. And it's also going to go over some potential changes she might receive, as she has had a bit of a weak release. In solo queue, I think she's going to be a bit weaker than she is in competitive. I think in competitive, she might actually get some play from some teams such as like 100 Thieves, Loud, or like Paper X, because they seem to adopt Gecko fairly fast on some maps. So maybe they would be the type of teams who want to sort of adopt Deadlock. There also is a chance that she gets played over Sage on some maps where Sage gets played. It depends on if that team decides that Deadlock gives more value than Sage would. I'm going to go over the first ability, the Gravnet. So the Gravnet originally I thought would have an active radius the whole time. So I thought that this would be active, and then if you walked into it, you would get forced crouch. And you would also be forced crouch for the duration. That is not the case. The Gravnet only has one pulse. As you saw me run into the circle, didn't do anything. And also it has a removable part where you can remove the net and then it's fine. Which makes this ability significantly weaker than I actually originally thought it was going to be. It also makes it weaker than Breach Stun, as Breach Stun does have its own advantages over something like this, as it tends to have a range advantage on most throwables, but to be fair, Fragment, which is the same line that this one uses, so this Gravnet has quite a big throwing arc, so you can throw it quite far, basically across the whole map if you want to. So it does still have like good range and things. It's just that Breach's Stun is still easier to use. And bear in mind as well, Breach is an initiator and Deadlock's a sentinel, so it really shouldn't be the fact that she should be able to use that aggressively across the map, really, as much as Breach should. So I'm not going to talk about, actually, I'm going to talk about potential changes to the abilities at the end, potentially. Actually, no, I'm not. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about potential changes to the abilities as to do them. So with the Gravnet, the one change that I think she might receive to this is a second charge, so 2 of them. The reason being is because I think that she might get... what's happening is on attack, she really struggles in the mid-round, or like to have impact in early round or mid-round as Deadlock, because you don't really have... like, you need to get to post-plant most of the time on Deadlock to actually have impact on attack. Or you need to get into a clutch of like a 1v1 or a 2v1 or something like that, right, where your Annihilation can actually probably carry you. Or like maybe you can force a fight with the sonic sensor that you've already previously placed, and it's a lot easier to do that when there's only 1 player alive on the enemy team, or 2 players potentially on the enemy team. So that's when she really excels. But the problem is like her mid-rounding and stuff is really bad. Like her default as well, like rank default, is really bad. Not actual default, but rank default is really bad. Because she doesn't really do too much in those scenarios. So I can see again a second nade to kind of help with that, right? So then she can set up plays more with her team, and she doesn't feel like she has to use this nade in the mid round to get value, or she's useless when it comes to like other parts of her play, right? It gives her a bit more options when it comes to taking the side on attack. Although on defense, it might also be a bit overkill to have 2 of them. Next, we're going to talk about the sonic sensor. I actually got all this right, which is nice. And I'm not going to talk about any changes this thing will get. It has a big radius. I don't think they're going to make it so it can see people walking. I think that would actually be like a... It's not very Riot of them, actually, I think, to go back on this type of stuff. They usually have pretty good faith in their design. Like, for a very long time until they feel the need that they actually do need to change after like a year of data or something. So it definitely won't get changed anytime soon if they feel like it needs to change. Next, we're going to go over the wall or the barrier mesh. So the barrier mesh, I think, was something that a lot of people were skeptical of being strong or good. But I personally think it's not bad. I actually don't think that Deadlock is going to get any changes for now. But I will talk about some potential ones, as I already have. So the barrier mesh is very tanky. As you can see, that was well over... I think that was a bit of mag, maybe a bit more. So yeah, so it was definitely just over a mag, I think. So this barrier mesh is really tanky. And I think, imagine like if I don't have a Vandal and I have like a classic or I have a ghost, it's going to take me a while to break this, right? So if you put it in the correct positions where they have to like shoot 2 of these, or they have to go to position to shoot these little orbs, then this can be really, really strong, right? And it's just going to take time for people to find those lineups, and I think people already have. So I think in general this ability is fine. I just think it does struggle to get value on attack. On some maps I think it's good, like on Ascent. I did also say yesterday that I think Ascent is going to be her best map. So maybe that is actually not true. Maybe there are some maps that are going to be better. But right now, I think Ascent is definitely the easiest map for her to play, because on attack, she can actually have real impact with the barrier mesh. And I think as a signature ability, it does struggle to get like value, which is very weird because it's a signature ability. Most signature abilities will get value every round. And not all of them, but usually the ones that have, like the weaker agents in the game, tend to have weaker signature abilities most of the time, right? Unless the kit is like in general a bit weak. But I think it does have, like, when you find the situation, it can be really strong. And I think there's potential 2 changes to this. One or the other. I don't think that both are going to be implemented at the same time, because that would be very, very crazy. But I think they might add a cooldown to it, so it'll be about 45 seconds, so you can get about 2 around. Because I think it will be 45 seconds after it breaks. So it would probably be about 2 around. And I think 2 around is fine. I think 3 around might be too much, because of how many bullets it would need to kill it, right? And obviously the enemy team are going to get less and less numbers as the round goes on, so you can imagine that 3rd one is going to be basically unbreakable. As you know, that person probably would have used bullets, and there's going to be less people shooting it. It would be an absolute nightmare to have that many barriers around. So I do think there might be a cooldown implemented for like 2 barriers around. I think that would mean that the barrier itself has to be weaker, so they might make the health pool a lot less, or a bit less, just to make it have. So basically, right now it has a really high of like impact, right? It can actually be really, really strong and have really high impact, and it really doesn't have. And it really has quite a big low end as well. But what I think would be the change here is if they do the cooldown, then the low would probably get lower, so it would have a lower impact in some rounds, because you wouldn't get both, and it would be lower health, so it would actually technically be a nerf on its current iteration in some situations. But if you do get the 2 off, then it's probably a net buff in most situations. That's what I can see they could do. They do that a lot in stuff like League as well. I think it overall would make the ability more consistent to have the cooldown. The next change would be just to make this infinite. So I think just making this infinite might actually be a decent change as well. Very similar to how I would see Trapwire, right, from Cypher, right? This would be the way to hold the flank. You would, and you know, it's a signature ability as well, which like actually I don't know. There's no trap that is a signature ability. It's from turret, I guess. So I guess this would be in the similar vein to turret, where you'd put it down. At the start of a round on attack, and you just like cover one spot for you. However, I also think that would actually be. Originally, I was thinking that might be strong on defense, right? Because you can just put it down at main, and then if they don't break it, they don't break it, and they'll just never be out on main. But the thing is with that is that good players will then react to a barrier mesh that gets placed at the start of the round, and they'll go break it at the start of the round, and then it'd be fairly useless. So then it still retains, like Deadlock has to pick her timings with the barrier mesh against good players. I think against lower elo, it probably would still be, quite strong. But I think against higher elo, having infinite barrier mesh wouldn't really change as much on defense, and it would change a lot on attack. So I think that might be a decent change. But we'll have to see. I personally don't think she needs changes right now anyway. I think eventually she might get changed when enough data is there, and when people have learned to a decent amount. Being like a change to the health pool on the cocoon, potentially getting a bit lower. That's the only change I can actually foresee with the ult. But I think overall it's fine for now. I think when people get used to it, they'll start to play around it better, and it'd be harder for it to get value with Annihilation. Although I feel like they may end up trying to nerf it in line a bit more with Razult and the value that Razult gets, because Razult doesn't always get value. it gets more zoning value. Maybe actually the ult probably does get the same value. Maybe it's just because she can shoot too fast. Maybe they'll make the time to pull it out a bit slower. That might be a change as well. But that's it for the video. I don't want to go on too long because I can talk for a very long time. So yeah, that's it for the video. I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.